This is the ancestral home of the Wabanaki Confederacy here, the people of the Dawn. My name is Joel Clement. I'm a senior fellow with the Harvard Kennedy School's Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs. We have an Arctic initiative there, and we're partnering this year with the Sustainable Development Working Group of the Arctic Council to produce and organize this year's 2020 Arctic Resilience Forum to be hosted by the Icelandic chairmanship. We're very excited to do this, and one of the things we've been hearing from people as we organize this is, could you do some kind of a resilience primer of some sort, a little refresher, to give us a sense of what you mean in the context of the Arctic and in the context of the Arctic Council by resilience. So I'm going to take a swing at doing that now, and I'm going to do it in the form of responding to audience questions, because it'll be easier to respond to questions we've received. So I'm just going to kick it off right now, and if there are more questions that emerge during the course of the forum, I'll do another one, I'll add more, and we'll keep appending to this. Hopefully this will just keep alive. So the first question we get frequently is, what's with all these definitions of resilience? Which one matters? Which one should we use? And does it matter? And frankly, it doesn't matter which definition you use. The key is to keep it simple and not go down the rabbit hole of terminology. The fact is, resilience is all about being able to absorb and respond to shocks and stresses or crisis and bounce forward, not just bounce back. Like a lot of people say, it's the ability to bounce back from a licking, but frankly, it's about doing better next time. So as you absorb these traumas, learn from them, and are more resilient next time around. So that's what building resilience is improving your ability to handle shocks and stresses and to do so better each subsequent time. And there are a lot of keywords we can focus on, things that mean resilience: flexibility, leadership, local empowerment turns out to be one of the strongest drivers of resilience. And these are all concepts that obviously are good in most any situation, but it's important to note that a community, for example, and we talk about social ecological systems in the context of resilience. That means the communities and the ecosystems they depend on. The social ecological systems may be very resilient, but they may be constrained by things beyond their control. Let's say the federal government or a state government. So one can be resilient at one scale, but their resilience could be constrained at another. So it's important to realize that nobody's responsible for resilience. Everybody is, and it's up to, it takes a village and then some to build resilience somewhere. So that's the number one question we get about definitions. And the key is, it's not just bouncing back, it's learning, growing, doing better next time. Ecosystems are great at this, and as are many of the communities of the North, and always were prior to some of the colonial constraints. So we'll talk more about that in the next section here. The next question is, what is this resilience buzzword? This is a new concept. Why is this coming out of nowhere? Well, for two reasons, it's not a new concept. There's been about 40 or 50 years of scholarship behind this notion of resilience. It's certainly more than a buzzword, but there's no reason everyone needs to adapt or adopt this term. It's just that there's a lot of scholarship there, and it's a very good way to describe how we can do better going forward. Now, it's been happening for a long time. It came out of the psychology academic papers, talk about ecology. I learned about resilience 20 years ago from some ecologists, and we were applying resilience to the health of organizations, so you can apply it to a lot of things. But it's also not a new concept in that the indigenous people of the North have been practicing resilience building for thousands of years, since time immemorial, and really a lot of the constraints they face now are as a result of colonial structures or change that is caused by others elsewhere in the world. Right. So, and we'll talk a little bit about climate change, because the next question we get frequently is, well, isn't this just climate adaptation? Isn't it the same thing? Resilience, climate change adaptation. What's the difference? And I will say, first of all, there's a very big difference in that resilience isn't necessarily about climate change. Resilience is a capacity. It's a state of being for a community or a social ecological system. It's a ability to respond, as I described earlier. Climate adaptation, those are actions that you take in order to adapt to change. Resilience is something that you've already built up. You're not adapting to change. You've put yourself in a position to adapt very well to change. So that may not be crystal clear, but the two most important things are that resilience may or may not have anything to do with climate change. So it's not a climate adaptation synonym, but also that it's a condition that allows one to adapt. But the adaptation itself is something different, climate adaptation. So that's what we get at there. And one of the reasons that question comes up is the translation of resilience into Norwegian and Russian in particular. It doesn't work very well because it comes out as sort of, you're on your heels, how do you handle this problem? And that's not really what this is. So there are some translational challenges with the term resilience. It's not a reactionary concept. In fact, it's about preempting difficulties. It's about taking measures in anticipation of shocks and stressors so that they don't knock you on your heels. So that's the third question we get quite a lot. The other one is resilience always, just good, right? You want to be resilient. And in fact, that's not necessarily true. Resilience isn't always good. There are some systems that you don't want to be resilient. Poverty, a poverty system, you want to break that down. You want to transform that. And that's the opposite of resilience, is a transformation. In this case, you'd want that. Difficult mental health issues, let's transform that problem in the North. We don't want that to be a resilient problem. Think of it as you're in a job and you've been working hard at this job. You've got your nose to the grindstone every day. It's really hard, but you have a stiff upper lip and you really stick it out. And you might say, well, I'm pretty resilient. When in fact, that's a bad system. You should quit that job and you should get a new job that fills you. And so that may help to give you a sense of what we mean by resilience. And sometimes it's not good. But what we strive for is to make sure that our communities are resilient to shocks and stresses. So all that to say, and we'll be taking more questions as the forum goes on, but all that to say that resilience is a pretty basic fundamental concept. In academia, it's become very complex. That's fine. There are a lot of nuances. But fundamentally, it's about building our ability, and not just the communities, but the systems within which they operate, so the national systems, the ecosystems, building our overall capacity to adapt, to respond, to roll with the punches, but not just bounce back up again, but next time be able to avoid the punches. So it's a really important concept. It's been practiced by indigenous people for so long, and if anything, their resilience has been constrained rather than enhanced by colonial structures. And so we have a lot of challenges to figure out where the line is, how to use both indigenous knowledge and Western science to improve the adaptive capacity of nations and communities in the North, because climate change is a transformation. The Arctic is transforming into a new climate state. That is something that unfortunately we're not able to stop now. We cannot, and even if we stop all carbon emissions today, that's going to happen, and we're not going back. So how do we adapt to that, but also how do we set ourselves up, and by we, I mean communities and all of us that partner with these communities and systems, so that these changes don't transform or disrupt the way of life. And that's what we're working toward, and that's what the Resilience Forum is all about. So we're very much looking forward to each of these sessions. We're covering a lot of ground with this thing. We've got an awful lot of people involved, and we're thrilled to be working with the Sustainable Development Working Group and the Icelandic Chairmanship to put this thing on for you guys. So looking forward to it. Hope you enjoy, and please do reach out with questions as they come up.